I first want to congratulate you on the disc. Amanda from Crossover Media sent me the files, and I've been having a lot of fun listening to this wonderful CD. It's been really great. The album is coming out on the 19th of this month, and this album that's called Liszt marks the renewal of your contract with Decca Classics. How does it feel to be back with Decca?
It's great to be continuing my partnership with them. I've recorded for Decca for 10 years now. I signed when I was 18. So I hope there'll be just many more years to come. And I look forward to the next few discs we have in this contract.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a little bit about the recording process and the mastering of the disc? Like, I guess the big question is, has COVID played a role did COVID play a role in the making of the CD?
It definitely did. We were lucky to be able to do it at a time when, we could make a recording. I mean, earlier in last year, of course, everything like that was just shut down for months. So we were able to do it. And, with anything of that nature, there were all of the restrictions in force of social distancing at the sessions and everything. And the mastering was very interesting because there are these programs, a little like Zoom for audio engineers, where you can sit with have the producer and engineer on the line and talk about things and listen to things as if you're all in the same room. So the technology is quite remarkable. And the producer informed me that he's been actually in sessions in Berlin, sitting at his home in Kent in England, through this software. So
Wow.
Great to be able to, through this whole period, we've been very thankful to have the technology that we have in order to keep us connected with the world. And without that, it wouldn't have been possible to do this, I think.
Mm-hmm. So this CD, it's called Liszt, and so obviously it consists of nothing but the music of Liszt. What is it about Liszt's music that you find so appealing? What draws you to it?
Well, he was a man of, there's sort of so many sides to him as a person and also as a musician there in his music. I mean, there are some composers, I suppose, where if you were to devote a disc to them, you might worry about lack of variety. But obviously with Liszt, in his composition output, there's such a lot of variety. And then there's also the fact that he was such an incredible transcriber of other people's music. He had amazing gifts in taking a whole opera and summarizing it into a paraphrase of 15 minutes, and by doing so, creating his own incredibly compelling narrative. So, and a great innovator as well. I mean, I don't really include any of this on this CD, although I did on my first CD for Decca. I included a little piece of late Liszt. And when he was an old man, he was still thinking in such unique ways. He wrote music that was sort of looked forward to atonality and to impressionism, really looking to the next century. So this is amazing, larger than life figure and musical spirit. And I wanted to do a disc that sort of showed some different sides to him. So we have, the sonata, one of his great masterpiece, and some other smaller original compositions, and then also some transcriptions.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Norma paraphrase is spectacular. Like I said before, I started recording, I was listening to it when Amanda sent me the tracks, and there's some, do you have any fingers left, I guess is the is the question. I mean, there's notes aplenty, that's for sure.
Yeah. In the Norma, you really need an extra hand for a lot of that, I think.
So the disc sort of has the Liszt B minor sonata as sort of the centerpiece. It's such a Mount Everest of a piece of music. How do you start? And was it at all daunting to start work on the Liszt B minor sonata?
It was for sure when I first learned it when I was a teenager. I suppose I've lived with it for a while. It's an extraordinary journey filled with so many different emotions. There's this kind of, I suppose throughout there's this kind of contrast between the divine and the diabolical, I suppose. This kind of devilish element which he sets out in the characters that we hear on the very first page. I mean, in terms of the structure, it's remarkable in that it's sort of, the whole piece is developed from material that we hear in the first a minute of the piece, and he transforms these themes into such surprising ways, at the same time unfolding this unconventional but recognizable sonata form in a piece that is essentially one stretch. It's one movement. You can't just listen to the second movement in the way that you would listen to the second movement of a Mozart sonata. It's a piece to be consumed in its entirety.
Yeah, it's roughly a little over 30 minutes of just amazingness. It's really quite something, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. I was watching some old interviews that you did on YouTube, and in one of them, you said that you were fascinated with older recordings, such as Horowitz, Cortot, Friedman. You said they have their own individual sound. Having said that, were there any recordings that you turned to as sort of reference recordings when you were recording this album of Liszt's music? I mean, everybody's got their favorites. Were there any particular recordings that you sort of had in the back of your mind as you were recording?
Well, I wanted to find my own way with the sonata, but there's there's a number of remarkable recordings. I mean, I suppose what's interesting is that there are a number of recordings that I find remarkable, which have completely different approaches to the piece. Some of them are not particularly well known, actually. I mean, two of my favorite recordings are live performances, one by Shura Shakaski, who in everything he played created this kind of in the moment improvisation like quality. And the piece is sustained by the fervor of his musical imagination and the turns of phrase and the color shifts that he could make and the characters that he could draw from the piano. Another of my favorites is a live recording by Rade Lupu. And it's completely different. I mean, it's immense, it's orchestral, it has this kind of inevitability to it, where one thing seems to naturally proceed into another. And then there's recordings like the one by Aral, which has this amazing kind of gnashing rhetoric, quite very broad at times, and quite it's very interesting in the kind of agogic things he does, the expressive things he does in stretching time and so on. So I think there are a number of different ways to approach it, and I sort of with these influences, I tried to find my own path.
Right. One of the other interesting things on the disc is that you're playing three of the Petrarca sonatas from the second book of Years of Pilgrimage. Do these pieces differ from the B minor sonata, or are they similar? Like, do they contrast at all to the B minor sonata?
You can tell they're by the same composer. They're much, they're intimate works. They're inspired by poems by the 14th century poet Petrarch, and the poems are all love poems, essentially. And Liszt picks three which present sort of contrasting visions of love. And they originated for Liszt as songs. He wrote them for voice and piano, and then eventually became these instrumental pieces. And there's an amazing variety between them, and you can see the way that Liszt paints the words at the piano. Maybe not necessarily the specific words, although if you look at the songs, a lot of the material is the same. But the second 104, which is maybe the most famous, the poem is filled with these kind of violent oxymorons, and the piece has that in it. It's a very dramatic work, sometimes intimate, sometimes powerful. And then 123, the third of the Petrarch sonnets, is the poem presents this kind of tender, reverential vision of love, and that's there in the music as well.
Mm-hmm. I know that on one of your previous albums, the album Homage, you recorded the appendices to the second book, Venice and Napoli.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've recorded a good portion of the second book. Have you ever thought about recording anything from the first or third book of the Years of Pilgrimage from Liszt?
I haven't played very much, but I suppose in a way I could have waited and done it all in one go. But I guess maybe I'll get there in dribs and drabs over the years. But it's all beautiful music, and I hope that I get to play it at some point.
Mm-hmm. I guess I'll wrap up the interview this way. What's next? What's next on your docket? I mean, post-COVID, during COVID, what do you have next coming up, other than the CD release that's happening on the 19th of February?
Well, I mean, that's a big question for all of us musicians at the moment, is actually what is going to be able to happen next. And I'm hopeful, it seems likely that I'll be able to go to Paris at the beginning of March, probably with a period of quarantine there. I have a residency in Paris, and I have a concert with an orchestra as part of that. So it seems like that will happen, and that will be my next thing. And I also have something in the UK. I have another residency with the Bournemouth Symphony, so there's a concert as part of that. So that's what I'm looking forward to in the immediate future. But beyond that, I mean, those 2 concerts will likely be streamed with no audience. So I'm just looking forward to some kind of return to normality again.
Yeah, as we all are.
Yeah.
Benjamin, thanks so much. It's just been a real joy. We play your recordings here on the station all the time. So you're a name that's well familiar with Winnipeg audiences. So it's just been a real treat to chat with you about this great CD that's coming out on the 19th. Thanks again.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.